The work begins as the sky begins to brighten. For Johnny Abney, the yard manager of a local cattle company, this is a busy morning. The cattle he needs to sell on commission are first in the auction barn today. There isn't much time between first light and 8 a.m. as autumn diminishes the daylight, and almost 1,500 cattle must be sorted, separated, and moved.
I sell all the cows and bulls. We cut the cows off and bulls off, and if there's 3 or more cows that fit together, and we run them to the sale. Started in 8106.
Yeah. Much of the work involves numbering and identifying the livestock.
There's a lot of bookkeeping with all these cattle and stuff, but that's so they can keep track of all the cows and where they go to. And if they go to the packing company, they can trace those back tags.
Sorting cattle has little in common with the cowboy. Sometimes Johnny and his men ride horses, but mostly they herd on foot using a whip instead of a lasso. And motorized three-wheelers are easier to saddle and cheaper to feed. To the rancher, the cattle company, and Johnny Abney, this isn't just livestock. It's money in the bank. Turning that profit boils down to Johnny doing his job and doing it right. In the auction barn, more than his 23 years of experience comes into play.
Yeah, my dad worked it. He worked for the Stockyards company. He used to be a trader. When I was young, he used to trade cattle. He worked for a commission firm, then he worked for a yard company.
So much heritage and experience means one thing. You can always count on Johnny Abney. Steve Hauck, News 4.
That current charge will take its normal course.
Do you know what his bond has been set?
We felt at this time it would be appropriate to at least speak to the fact that the investigation is proceeding and that we're encouraged with what we're coming up with thus far, and hope to in some way allay some of the concerns of the community.
Would you say?
They came out with one brand new plan. Wasn't new for Mondale. Looked into the lens. The new candor. Came out to the American people and said, hey, I got a plan for you. I'm going to raise everybody's taxes. And it died for lack of a second.
The waiting for Frank McClarity began at 1:30. 10 women and 2 men were asked to decide if the former daycare center bus driver was guilty of molesting a 6-year-old girl. The jurors had listened to half a week's worth of testimony and argument about the allegation. Under tight security, the defendant and his family waited for the jury's answer. That answer came shortly before 8:30. The jury foreman said the panel was hopelessly deadlocked. 11 members for guilty and 1 for not guilty. Saying further deliberation would serve no useful purpose, District Judge Lehman Freeman dismissed the jury and declared a mistrial. The mistrial means Frank McClarity will have to be retried. He left the courtroom thankful for his temporary freedom.
Lord, for answering my prayers.
Thank you, Lord. Thank
I
you,
know the
Lord.
Lord was in this thing all the way. Thank God he answered the prayer. God will hear and answer prayer if you trust in him. Thank you.
How do you feel about the fact that it was 11-1?
Nothing else.
No more comments.
No
Thank
more
you.
comments. Thank you. And we want to thank you all.
Even before the defendant departed, the prosecutor was already thinking about a retrial.
Of course, anytime you try it a second time around, loses a little surprise element as far as the prosecution might go, and of course your hand, so to speak, is exposed, so just have to prepare it a lot better next time.
Attorneys for both sides left the courthouse making promises. The DA promised to refile this case first thing next week, and McClarity's defense attorney promised to ask for a change of venue so that this case will be reheard somewhere other than in Oklahoma County. Scott Wallace, News 4 at the County Courthouse.
The problem of black-on-black crime has been growing in Oklahoma City in recent years. Statistics show that 90% of violent crimes against blacks were committed by blacks. Oklahoma City's Urban League is now joining 7 other U.S. cities toward looking for a solution. The League is outlining new programs to encourage residents of the black community to fight crime instead of each other. New Haven, Connecticut has been very successful in boosting black neighborhood awareness, and its Urban League president says the Oklahoma City picture will only improve if the community wants it to.
The message is that we as a community, we as black people, will no longer tolerate crime in our neighborhoods. And we will actively engage in activities that will impact upon the incidence of crime in our neighborhoods. Until that particular community or neighborhood comes to the point where they say, yes, we want to do something about this problem, you will not have a successful program. It has to be a response from the community.
Building citizen response to the problem in Oklahoma City will take time. The League first plans to educate black residents on what they can do to combat the black-on-black crisis. Community involvement is seen as a crucial ingredient toward crime reduction because only people working together can make a difference. Ed Stewart, News 4.
The Farmers and Merchants Bank ran out of cash, according to Bank Commissioner Robert Empey. But the real message here tonight is that all depositors' funds are safe.
And it has been a busy night at the Farmers and Merchants Bank. Inside, the new owners, Republic Bank Shares of Oklahoma City, and the FDIC are working to open the bank under the new name of Republic of Tecumseh tomorrow morning. Worried customers dropped by this evening to see about their money.
My funds for gasoline for the month was, in the bank, and I wondered, well, when I was going to be able to get them out,
But the new owners had reassuring words.
All the depositors are protected as a result of the way this was structured.
The Farmers and Merchants Bank of Tecumseh has been in trouble for some time.
The bank's problem started 2.5 years ago at the instance of the Coy Everett affair. There was a young man in the Shawnee area that perpetrated a Ponzi scheme to the extent of about $32 million.
Criminal charges could come out of this closing, but Empey says that will be up to the FDIC. Dan Slocum, News 4, Tecumseh.
What I'm worried about is that the president has made that very clear, that there's no other alternative. The workers in the plants made concessions to the corporation that lasted throughout that 2-year agreement. And then at the end of that agreement, The corporation announced the record profits and the exorbitant bonuses paid to the top officers of the corporation. That came under an agreement when we gave concessions.
You know, aspirin is a drug that's been around a long, long time, and it's amazing how many other functions it has other than relieving aches, pains, and headaches. Aspirin's a fairly safe and effective way to treat a lot of common ailments, such as headaches and colds. But have you ever wondered just what makes aspirin work?
First of all, it's an analgesic, which means that it reduces pain. Second, it's an antipyretic, which means that it reduces temperature, and that's especially valuable when the person has a fever. And third, it's an anti-inflammatory drug, which means that it reduces inflammation in joints and swelling.
Well, like all other safe drugs, it can be abused. Prolonged high doses of aspirin can cause a decrease in hearing, ringing in the ears, occasional bleeding in the stomach, and, believe it or not, headaches. Now, it's important to use aspirin carefully. Follow the directions on the bottle, or particularly follow the instructions of your doctor. Another common complaint that people express with the use of aspirin is that it causes them to feel like their stomach is upset.
It's a gastric irritant. The stomach upset will be a very common experience with people taking aspirin.
Now, please remember, aspirin is a drug and should be treated as such. Don't overdo it. And be sure that you keep aspirin, as well as any other drug, out of children's tiny hands. Take good care of them. I'm Dr. Red Duke. You know, a lot of folks spend several months each year rubbing itching eyes and blowing their nose because they've got allergies. Now, if you are one of these unfortunate folks, you are no doubt quite familiar with the medications we call antihistamines. Antihistamines are used to treat all kinds of allergic reactions, and they're also beneficial for the relief of stuffy noses, like with a cold, some types of nausea, and dizziness. Antihistamines, however, do have some significant side effects.
Perhaps the most common and really the most troublesome side effect is the drowsiness and tiredness. It's extremely characteristic of antihistamines, to the point where some antihistaminics are actually used now predominantly for that purpose.
Antihistamines may give you some relief, but you must be very careful to be sure that you don't hurt yourself or someone else trying to drive a car or use some complicated machinery while you're drowsy because of taking the antihistamine. Now, if you've got an allergy, I can really sympathize with you. But you've got to recognize also it's important to reach a balance between the amount of symptoms you're willing to put up with and the medication you take to relieve your symptoms, because these antihistamines do have a side effect. Number one is drowsiness or sleepiness, and that can be dangerous. Take good care of yourself. I'm Dr. Red Duke. You know, I bet the last time you had a cold, there's a good chance you went into a drugstore looking for something to take, like an antihistamine, a cough medicine, or a decongestant. I want to talk to you for a few minutes about decongestants. A decongestant is a drug that works by reducing the swelling in the lining of the nose, throat, and airway. Now, you can find decongestants in a lot of different forms, but by far the most common is nasal sprays or nose drops.
They can be sprayed right on the mucosa and have a beneficial effect without all the effects on your heart and blood pressure and so on.
The most effective, quick relief can be obtained with a nasal spray. However, you should not use a nasal spray more than 2 times a day, and certainly no more than 3 consecutive days. If you continue to use these decongestant sprays for a long period of time, they're no longer effective. If your symptoms continue, then I suggest that you check with your doctor. Now, I want to emphasize that our bodies were designed to take care of themselves. It'll heal itself most of the time. You don't need a medicine for every ache, pain, and problem that you've got. So use medications carefully and judiciously, including over-the-counter drugs. I'm Dr. Red Duke.
Every time I have tried on the local level here in the state and on the federal level through Washington, and every time I have had the same thing thrown at me, that there is lack of funding. And so we're hoping this problem will be alleviated by this fund also. What I'm wanting to do is tell the child abductors, hey, Oklahoma's serious about their kids, and let's keep them.
As we replace boilers in some of those schools, we'll be removing boilers that are presently covered with asbestos but are encapsulated. So I think we have been inspected. We meet the letter of the law, as I understand it.
Where we see over and over again somebody falling between the cracks of the system. And that's something that's close to his heart. You know, as many of you know, I'll be arguing in front of the Supreme Court on November 7th about the debt for DHS that are just, most of them are law-abiding anyway. I'd like to see us work together and set that as a goal. Recommendations of procedure and legislation that can, if you will, eliminate some of the cracks in the criminal justice system.
I guess the question, though, that needs to be answered is why. The answer to that question is not that Presbyterian is having financial difficulties. That is not the answer to that issue. It's been misunderstood from time to time. Presbyterian Hospital has developed a $100 million corporation, certainly has debt like any other corporation, but the opportunity to infuse capital not only into Presbyterian Hospital but those institutions that were related to To build further fine quality institutions is certainly an advantage with joining with a company that
the American way of life. We have to put them beyond the reach of the thousands and thousands. 6%, 60 The answer is to go back to a gold and silver money, which is not manipulatable. You know, as long as the government can print paper money to cover its debts, then we'll be in a constant situation of crisis. And only by going back to a non-manipulable gold and silver standard will we be able to get out of it.
Supposed to do the original Sunshine Boys. And then he passed away, and then I read for the part. And that changed my whole career. I became an actor. It was the first time I ever used a different name. You see, whenever we did, when Gracie and I were in pictures, they never wrote for us. They'd say, Burns and Allen do 3 minutes here, Burns and Allen do 2 minutes, Burns and Allen do 4. And I'd bring in my own stuff. But then with the Sunshine Boys, you had Neil Simon writing the words. You had Walter Matthau, you had Dick Benjamin, and Herb Ross was the director, and I got paid for doing it. And the easiest thing you can do is really acting. That's the easiest. Because when you go on the stage and you stand up and you sing and you talk for an hour, you know, that's it.
It's hard.
You can't do it over.
You know, Saul Burton died.
Go on.
Who's Saul Burton? You don't remember Saul Burton?
Oh, yes, the manager of the Belasco Theater.
That was Saul Bernstein.
Not Saul Bernstein. Saul Burton was the manager of the Belasco Theater.
Saul Bernstein was the manager of the Belasco Theater, and it wasn't the Belasco Theater, it was the Morosco Theater.
Sid Weinstein was the manager of the Morosco. Sal Burton was the manager of the Belasco. Sal Bernstein, I don't know who the hell was.
How can you remember anything? Were you surprised when you were nominated for an Academy Award?
Sure. When people saw the picture, they came to me and said, you're going to win the thing for supporting actor. I said, I won it. Turned out to be the best supporting actor.
So you played Al Lewis, which is not you.
No.
And then you have played God, which is a pretty good role.
Well, when they asked me to, I was very lucky. Nobody's ever seen God. Did man fall from grace in the Garden of Eden? I'll tell you something never came out. I made Adam 17. Eve was 15, 16 tops. I figured then 16, 17 was middle age, you know. Who knew people would live so long? Trees, I figured had the best chance. Now I realize that they were kids, babies. Young people can't fall from my grace. They're my best things. Put that down. Great story. Kid called me up I'm a member of the Hillcrest Country Club. He says he wants to speak to God. So they put me on the phone. The kid says, God? I said, yeah. He says, we're playing baseball tomorrow. Please see that it doesn't rain. I says, okay, it won't rain tomorrow. And as luck would have it, it didn't. But he called me back the following day. He says, thanks, God, but we lost.
never had the opportunity to do it because he didn't get the money
that the alumni needs to find out what needs to be done. They need to get in there and do the things that need to be done, scholarships, wills, and all the other kind of things that the usual schools do, or the usual alumni do for their school. And I'm saying it's not being done.
Well, we'll operate full 16 hours today, and right now we've been able to get enough material in here to operate at least 4 hours each shift on Monday. Hopefully with the settlement by Canada over the weekend, and if they're back to work on Monday, we'll probably have to be down Tuesday and Wednesday, but back to work on Thursday.
These higher ranks now have the same protections that all the other lower ranks have. They can go through a neutral binding grievance procedure, and they can have their wages negotiated.
Police officers from throughout western Oklahoma came to this lonely area of Beckham County to help look for the gun that was used to kill Trooper Guy David Nalley. Nalley was found fatally wounded Saturday night after pulling over a tractor-trailer rig about 16 miles west of Elk City. Nalley had been shot 3 times. A short time later, a suspect was arrested. Police are not releasing his name. And today they were searching the route they believe the suspect drove, looking for the gun he allegedly used to kill David Nalley.
Nalley stopped a tractor-trailer rig along this lonely section of State Highway 6 about 8:30 last night on a routine traffic violation. He later learned that the rig may have been stolen and radioed for assistance. But by the time that assistance got here, Nalley lay fatally wounded by the side of the road.
Nalley was given CPR at the scene by emergency crews, but he died a short time later at Elk City Hospital. The 29-year-old Nalley was a 2-year veteran of the Highway Patrol out of Cheyenne. He leaves behind a wife and 4 children. His 4th child had been born only weeks ago. The trailer the suspect had allegedly been transporting had been reported stolen from Dallas. It was found abandoned several miles from the murder scene. The suspect was picked up driving only the cab.
Evidently, a short time after the shooting incident occurred, the individual driving the truck dumped the trailer, got back onto Highway 6, proceeded east towards Elk City, at which time he was stopped by a Beckham County officer. Apprehension was made.
The suspect has been booked into the Beckham County Jail, where he is expected to be arraigned tomorrow. Jeff Fowler, News 4, Elk City.
We hope to get about $90,000 in revenue off this program, and we'll be getting it all during this 3-week period if it goes well and the citizens respond to this. So it will be money we probably wouldn't have collected, or certainly wouldn't have collected all at one time.
tie.
Mr. Isaac? Yes. Hi, Kurt Autry with the NBC affiliate in town. What do you hope to accomplish at today's meeting?
Oh, just answer people's questions.
That's terrible.
Hasn't been a long road. This is my third time here. I've only been to one other scene of one other bank failure in the out of the 170 we've handled since I've been chairman, and this is my third time to Penn Square.